I'm Angela.
And I'm Paige.
Join us as we dive into our obsession with true crime, history, and mysterious stories. We'll explore the intricate details of the corrupt, the cruel, and the calculating.
We assume no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of this episode. The Corrupt Podcast is based on the facts and our opinions of the case. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Corrupt Podcast. On June 5th, 1986, Stella Nickell called authorities to report her 52-year-old husband, Bruce Nickell, was having a seizure. Bruce died later that evening at the Seattle Harborview Medical Center. 6 days later, Sue Snow took 2 Excedrin capsules and died shortly afterward. The incidents threw the country into a panic, with concerns of Seattle dealing with a copycat of the 1982 Chicago Tylenol Murders.
Before we dive into the case of Stella Nickell, we're going to chat quickly about the Chicago Tylenol Murders. In September 1982, 7 people would die in 3 days. Though there have been many suspects, the murder remains unsolved more than 40 years later. Ranging from 12 years old to 31 years old, the victims had ingested cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules and died suddenly. Cyanide is a dangerous and lethal chemical, causing death within minutes. It's used in photo development and making some paper products. Cyanide is naturally occurring in green potatoes, raw elderberries, bitter almonds, rhubarb leaves, and even apple seeds.
Immediately after ingesting cyanide, symptoms include headache, dizziness, and nausea. Cyanide kills quickly by starving the body, particularly the brain and heart, of oxygen. It is the poison and suicide pills used by secret agents. The Chicago cyanide murders changed the medication industry. Over 31 million bottles of Tylenol were recalled. For the first time, tamper-proof packaging was used. Foil seals and plastic wrappings are now commonplace around our over-the-counter medications. A year after the incident, the U.S. Congress passed the Tylenol bill, making it a federal offense to tamper with consumer products. Stella Nickell was heavily influenced in the events that occurred in Illinois in 1982.
Stella Maudine Stevenson was born on August 7, 1943, in Colton, Oregon. She was the 5th child born to Joe and George Stevenson. Stella's mother, Jo, impressed on her the importance of sticking together as a family through thick and thin. Stella and her siblings grew up listening to Jo preach about how families always had to have each other's back, no matter what.
As Stella was growing up, Jo brought in a string of abusive men. Even the split with Jo and George had been involving a drunken fight where George grabbed a shotgun and shot at his own children and wife. Jo packed the kids up and separated them between her siblings, then went back to Oregon to divorce George. It wasn't easy on Jo and the 5 kids, and Stella didn't make it any easier. By the time Stella was 13 years old, she was dating older guys and frequently running away from home.
At 15 years old, Stella became pregnant. She told her family that she was raped by her boyfriend and his friend. The family seems to be split on believing Stella about the rape. One sister had had the same situation happen to her, so she believed Stella's story. Stella hid the pregnancy for 4 months, but when Jo found out, she wanted Stella to marry the boy who had gotten her pregnant. Stella refused, saying that she wouldn't marry her attacker. She would trick another man, though, Ricky Olsen, into thinking the baby was his instead.
On October 23, 1959, Stella gave birth to her first daughter, Cynthia Cindy Lee Slauson. Things were falling apart with Stella and Ricky's relationship, mostly because Ricky wasn't legally old enough to marry Stella, and she was upset that he wouldn't lie to the courthouse about his age. To provide Cindy with a stable childhood and allow Stella to be a teenager herself, Jo attempted to officially adopt Cindy.
When Jo requested her birth certificate for Cindy's adoption papers, she made an interesting discovery. Turns out that her real name wasn't Alva Georgia Jo, but her name was actually Cora Lee. For the rest of her life, she would go by Coralie. So we're going to call her Coralie from this point out as well. So just be aware that Coralie and Joe are the same person and both Stella's mom.
Leaving Ricky behind, Stella and Cindy moved to California with Coralie on New Year's Day in 1960.
It wouldn't be the last of Ricky, though, because he truly believed that Cindy was his daughter. He mailed Stella a letter threatening to take custody of Cindy by proving that she was an unfit mother. Stella wasn't about to lose her daughter. She mailed Ricky a letter telling him that Cindy wasn't his daughter, but if he wanted to go to court, he would be spending 20 years behind bars for statutory rape. That would be the last time that Ricky would contact Stella or attempt to gain custody of Cindy.
Stella didn't slow down in California, frequently leaving Cindy with Coralie to spend days with men. In 1962, 19-year-old Stella became pregnant again. Coralie was very upset about the pregnancy. She was working full-time and taking care of Cindy while Stella was away, and now Stella was pregnant again? The baby's father was 5 to 6 years older than Stella and in the Air Force. He also had no intention of marrying Stella. Coralie insisted that Stella give the baby up for adoption, and Stella agreed.
Stella's son was born on March 10, 1963. By her choice, she never held him or saw his face. The baby was immediately taken away for adoption. Stella told her siblings that the baby was stillborn, leaving Stella and Coralie as the only two who knew the truth for decades. Just a year later, Stella married Robert Warren Bob Strong. Now Stella Strong, she became a stay-at-home mom to 4-year-old Cindy. It wasn't long before Stella would be having affairs during the day, usually at hotels. Bob pretended not to notice, but then she started bringing men into their home. At one point, Bob caught Stella on their couch with another man, but a week after the incident, she denied ever even being on the couch with that man.
On November 4th, 1966, Stella gave birth a third time to another daughter, Leah Ruth Strong. For the sake of the girls, Bob continued looking the other way about Stella's infidelities. Cindy was constantly in trouble for doing what her mother was doing, lying, cheating, and stealing. This put Bob in the uncomfortable position of dishing out the consequences that Stella demanded. Stella's punishments of Cindy were so frequent that Bob began to pretend to punish Cindy, closing her bedroom door, snapping his belt, and having Cindy cry out in pretend pain.
Bob is the real hero in this story. He is just a gem.
For sure.
In January 1969, Stella spent the night in jail and was ordered to attend counseling for beating 9-year-old Cindy with either a curtain rod or a 3-foot log. Now, Stella initially told Bob that Cindy had stolen her makeup and earrings, and the bruises were minor. Bob and Stella both agree that Cindy did bruise easily, but when Bob saw Cindy, he would say it looked like she was beaten half to death. More recently, Stella has a different story about the abuse.
Cindy wasn't feeling good. She wanted to stay home. There was nothing wrong with her. I sent her to school. She told the nurse I had beat her that morning. They arrested me, and I was only in jail overnight.
Stella continued on to say that Cindy had lied to the school because she was jealous of her. This is a 9-year-old that's jealous of her mom.
Yeah, really, the whole family's just messed up.
Yeah. And it gets worse. There's just a cycle of abuse from Stella, well, really from Joe, Stella's upbringing to Stella, to Cindy, and then Cindy's daughter as well. Like, it just keeps going.
I'm interested in the backstory of how Joe didn't know her name was Coralie. Like, the parents just kept that from her.
I couldn't find anything about that unless her parents just called her Joe, but it was a mouthful of a name, like Alva, Georgia, and they call her Joe. That's not even close to Coralie.
No, not at all.
Like, at 2 years old, they had some regrets and they're like, we don't like Coralie. We're just going to change your name. You're Alva Joe now.
I mean, it sounds like the abuse started there.
Probably something going on farther back, yeah.
Not saying changing your child's name is abusive. You can change your child's name. Just let them know that you're changing their name.
Not that they're much older, request their birth certificate and like, what? I'm Coralie.
Yeah. I like how she went with it too. She's like, oh, my name's Cora Lee. I'm going to take that and just run with it, you know? Forget Joe.
They really like the Lee name because Cindy Lee, Leah, Cora Lee, they really like it.
Yeah, they do. Cindy eventually was removed from the home and into CPS care for 24 hours. At this point, one of the workers accidentally let slip that Cindy's last name wasn't Strong, but Slauson, meaning that Bob wasn't her father. Cindy was devastated. After leaving CPS custody, Cindy would be placed under Bob's care while Stella went through group therapy for the abuse. Unfortunately, Cindy and Bob's relationship would never be the same.
In May 1970, Stella's cousin Bonnie called to say that she needed a place to stay for herself, her husband Wendell, and their 3 children. Stella welcomed them into her home while they got their feet under them again. On May 15, 1970, Bonnie and Wendell had their welfare check and food stamps transferred to Orange County, California, where Stella and Bob lived. Bonnie and her family never made that move because during the drive to Stella's, they were involved in a car accident.
Orange County didn't receive notification that Bonnie's family hadn't completed the move. That September, welfare and food stamps in Wendell's name arrived at Stella and Bob's home. Stella cashed the $119.50 checks from September 1970 to January 1971. She even had another man forge Wendell's signature on the checks. Stella wasn't quiet about what she was doing. Bob knew and told her it was bad news. The neighbors also knew Stella was fraudulently cashing the welfare checks.
Bonnie and her family finally moved in with Stella in February 1971. Bonnie expressed her thankfulness for the welfare that had kept her family afloat even during the delayed time between September 1970 and January 1971. Stella told Bonnie that the checks from the Orange County office had also been coming to her home, and she had been cashing them. Apparently, she had been expecting Bonnie to be accepting of the welfare fraud, but within 2 days, Bonnie had turned Stella in.
Stella would be convicted of 1 count of forgery and sentenced to 6 months in jail. Bob would not be charged as Stella told the welfare investigators he had no part in the fraud. At least she did something right. Goodness.
Absolutely. Bob would say, she was making sure that I was clear so that I could take care of the kids. The kids were first, nothing else. She would lay down her life for the kids.
Cora Lee stayed with Bob during that time to help him with 11-year-old Cindy and 4-year-old Leah. During Stella's incarceration, Bob began to date his neighbor, Pat. Even though Stella was released from jail with only 4 months served, the marriage was over for Bob. He couldn't afford the rent on his own, so he and the girls had already moved into Pat's house.
Stella was furious. No man had ever left her. She hooked up with Eddie Jones, a biker involved with the Haitians. Stella became known as Eddie's old lady and soon tried enlisting gang members to murder Bob and Pat. The Haitians were having none of it. She was kicked out, and Eddie dumped her too. On a separate occasion, Stella got drunk and called Bob to tell him that she tried to hire a hit on both him and Pat.
She was vicious about anything Bob or Pat had to do with the girls. Bob commented on Leah's beautiful curly hair, so Stella had it cut short. Bob gave Cindy a fish tank, and Stella flushed the fish down the toilet.
So she would lay her life down for her children, but she would also treat them very poorly.
Yeah, that's not a motherly figure in my eyes at all.
She flushed Cindy's fish down the toilet. She's trying to hire a hit on her ex-husband. It's just horrible stuff that all of them went through. Poor Pat, she's just in love with Bob, and think of all the baggage that came with him.
Yeah, she's just the innocent neighbor.
She is. She falls in love with her neighbor. He's got 2 beautiful girls, and now here's Stella.
Bob filed for custody of Leah, but as Cindy wasn't biologically his daughter, he couldn't fight for custody of her.
Stella decided it was time to leave California for Washington. She rented a very small garage for the girls to live in and only stopped in occasionally to make sure they had groceries. Cindy made sure that Leah had food by asking the neighbors for food. She was responsible for taking care of Leah and getting them both to school every day. Eventually, it became too much, and Cindy left for California, leaving Leah behind. Cindy would end up bouncing between foster care and living with Cora Lee. Without Cindy to care for Leah, Stella was forced to drop her off with her sister Mary. Bob had won custody of Leah, but was having a hard time tracking her down. Eventually, they were able to locate her with Mary and take her back to California.
Free from her responsibilities to her children, Stella bounced from man to man and bar to bar. In 1976, Stella appeared to settle down again, marrying Bruce Nickell. Bruce was born on June 1, 1934, in Washington. He was the only child of Walter and Ruth Nickell. Bruce started drinking at 15, but his parents never talked to him directly about it, even as they worried about his poor decisions.
Stella would be Bruce's fifth marriage. When Bruce met Stella in January 1973, he had only been married 4 months to his fourth wife when he decided it was over and Stella was the woman for him. Bruce had 2 sons from prior marriages and worked as a heavy equipment mechanic at the State Department of Transportation. He took his job seriously, only drinking heavily on the weekend, but staying sober throughout the week.
So Stella and Bruce met in 1973 and they just didn't get married until 1976?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. 3 years into their marriage, Stella was begging Bruce to drink less. Their weekends at the bar were running $250 a week, which had them living above their means. Bruce originally refused, but by 1979, he agreed to enter rehab for alcoholism. At the same time, 19-year-old Cindy gave birth to a daughter.
On June 5th, 1986, at 5:02 p.m., Stella would call 911 to report Bruce was having a seizure. It was just days after Bruce's 52nd birthday. He had gone to work as normal and returned home at 4:10 p.m. Stella made dinner and Bruce hopped in the shower. Then he grabbed 4 Excedrin and sat down in front of the TV. Bruce stood up and headed to the patio, possibly looking at a hawk that flew over their land. It was then that Bruce bent over in pain and told Stella that he thought he was going to pass out.
When the ambulance arrived, they had a hard time locating the Nickell home. Eventually, they found the mobile home owned by Stella and Bruce, but instead of flagging them down like a concerned wife, Stella was watching them drive up from the window. Bruce was life-flighted to Harborview Medical Center. By 8:45 p.m., Bruce was declared dead. Hospital staff initially noted that his death was from emphysema.
The first thing Stella did the following morning was call Bruce's boss at the Department of Transportation. She told the boss simply that Bruce wouldn't be in, he died, and then she hung up. Then she moved on to Bruce's parents, who are now in their 90s and learning about the death of their only child. She's just so callous. Like, that is the death of their only child. It's his boss. And she just, yep, he won't be in, he died. The end. Like, can you imagine being the boss and being like, okay, we should probably have some other conversations. Life insurance, what happened?
Yeah, it just sounds like she has no soul, you know?
Yes.
Like nothing's there. Not a zip. Those poor parents, too, in their 90s.
I know.
But they're thinking, well, we'll see Bruce soon, though.
Oh my God. Terrible. Ooh, that went dark.
Is it dark or is it light? You know, there's 2 ways of looking at it.
They could live for 10 more years. They're only in their 90s.
Well, yeah. Unlikely, but...
It's true. That is true. It's a little unlikely. Then Stella headed to Cindy's apartment to tell her about Bruce's death. Cindy had a friend Dee over when Stella arrived. Dee was outside the room when she overheard Stella say,
I know what you're thinking. The answer is no.
This is apparently because Stella had been trying to murder Bruce for years. According to Cindy, Stella had been planning Bruce's death almost from the honeymoon.
In 1985, Stella took out multiple life insurance policies. The first was a $20,000 policy with All American Life. Then a month later, Stella purchased a second $20,000 policy from All American Life. A Northwestern National Life policy carried a $75,000 limit, including an additional $100,000 payout if Bruce's death was accidental. The problem Stella ran into was the insurance accident clause. It wouldn't pay without Bruce's death being an accident, and emphysema wasn't an accident. Stella contacted the medical examiner office on June 7th and June 13th, questioning the examiner's preliminary findings of emphysema, but there was no change to the determination. So Stella tampered with 5 more bottles of medication and placed them on store shelves in Seattle.
Across the city, a complete stranger purchased a bottle of Excedrin. It took 6 days for 40-year-old Sue Snow to ingest 2 laced Excedrin extra-strength tablets. Sue's 15-year-old daughter Haley was the last person to see her alive on the morning of June 11, 1986. It was 6:43 a.m. when Haley called 911 to report that Sue had fallen in the bathroom and something was very wrong. The fire department would arrive just 4 minutes later to find Sue gasping for air and unresponsive.
By 7:30 a.m., Sue was admitted to the trauma center at Harborview Medical Center. Just hours later, Sue was declared brain dead and taken off life support. She was the vice president of the North Auburn branch of the Puget Sound Bank. She was also a twin, speaking to her sister Sarah on the phone every day. Sue had 2 daughters, Exa and Haley. I like that name, Exa. I've never heard that before.
It's a different name. I really like it too. She had met her husband, Paul Webb King, in 1978. Paul had been married 3 times previously and had only been married to Sue for 6 months before her death. He was a long-haul trucker and not very popular with Sue's family. During Sue's autopsy, the medical examiner assistant, Janet Miller, noticed a smell of bitter almonds when Sue's chest cavity was opened. Noting this, Sue's blood sample was sent for additional testing, which confirmed that Sue had been poisoned with cyanide.
After arriving at Sue's home, Sarah noticed that the Excedrin was in capsule form, which is different from tablets she usually bought. This seemed suspicious to Sarah. Tablets can't be laced, and suddenly there were capsules in Sue's home. On June 16th, the FDA analysis was back for the bottle of Excedrin from Sue's kitchen. The 60-count bottle had 56 pills remaining. Depending on how many pills Sue had taken, the bottle contained either 9 or 11 laced capsules. This information was sent directly to the FBI.
Excedrin manufacturer Bristol Myers issued an immediate recall of extra-strength Excedrin from all Seattle area stores. Law enforcement looked closest at the bottles matching Sue's, with lot 5H102 and an expiration date of August 1988. Every single Excedrin capsule was run through an X-ray machine. The 3 main ingredients of Excedrin are acetaminophen, aspirin, and caffeine. Cyanide shows a darker area in the bottle as it's denser than those 3 ingredients. 2 more bottles of tampered medication were found from the ones that had been pulled from the store shelves.
Stella's next move was to insert herself into the investigation by calling the police to report that she thought Bruce's death and Sue Snow's death were connected. Stella told the officer that Bruce's Excedrin bottle matched Sue Snow's lot number. The police headed to Stella's home to pick up the Excedrin bottle and another bottle she had in the house as well. Stella told investigators that she had purchased the 2 bottles at 2 different stores approximately 2 weeks apart. One of the bottles was almost empty. Only 8 pills remained in that bottle.
To clarify, that was a lot of the number 2. Stella had 2 bottles that she purchased at different places 2 weeks apart. She told the King County police officer, Edward Sexton, that Bruce had recently had a checkup, and there was no indication at all of emphysema. He had been complaining of a headache lately and taking 3 to 4 Excedrin a day for the pain. Bruce had also left work early multiple times due to stomach issues. Unlike Sue Snow, Bruce had been buried and a final autopsy had not been completed. He had been an organ donor, and his eyes remained, so a vial of blood was removed and sent away for cyanide testing.
The FDA lab results came back before the blood test, confirming that both of Stella's Excedrin bottles did actually contain cyanide, which made investigators suspicious. Out of the 15,000 bottles that were pulled from the shelves during the recall, what were the chances that Stella would have 2 bottles, which she said she had purchased from different stores? Because the Stelly is a sussy.
It's like 1 out of thousands that she would purchase them 2 weeks apart, 2 different stores, and they both be laced.
Yeah, guilty.
She would disagree with that.
Oh, I don't care. I'll fight her.
I don't know. She's a scary broad.
She does look kind of odd.
Yeah. On June 19th, the FBI and FDA teamed up to speak with Stella. As she was interviewed, agents inspected the home. In Stella's bathroom cabinet, a 3rd bottle of Excedrin was found. This bottle had the lot number 5H102, matching the laced capsules previously found in the home. This 3rd bottle was taken in as evidence.
At a pay and save store on June 24th, 1986, 2 FBI agents were continuing their inventory check to confirm all Excedrin bottles had been removed from the shelves when another odd discovery was made. A 50-count bottle of Anisin 3 was sitting on a can of peanuts, and it didn't even belong at the pay and save. The store didn't carry the 50-count size, and a sticker on the bottle saying, "as advertised," was not used in pay and save either. The FBI took this bottle into evidence, and just hours later, it was confirmed the tampered medication list now included a bottle of Anisin 3.
Great police work there. They saved lives by catching one strange bottle with an incorrect label and size.
Absolutely.
I had to look up Anisin 3. I had no idea what this was.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. And I was a pharmacy tech at one point.
So Anisin 3 is aspirin and caffeine, but it also contains acetaminophen. Apparently, it used to be marketed as aspirin-free, as like a direct competitor against Tylenol.
Why would it be aspirin-free if it has aspirin in it?
Yeah, I think they've changed their ways. Either way, you can still find this everywhere. It is literally sold at the Walmart in our town. I have just apparently never noticed it there.
Yeah, because who needs aspirin and caffeine together? I don't understand that. You have a headache or Excedrin has caffeine in it.
Yeah. This is apparently one of the oldest pain relievers on the market.
Okay.
So there's your strange drug facts.
Pharmaceuticals, man. Can't trust them.
Sue's new husband, Paul, was initially the main person of interest in her sudden death. He had been unfaithful to Sue in the months before they got married, and his attitude didn't help matters. To top it off, Paul had recommended that Sue switch from Excedrin tablets to capsules right before her death. Paul wasn't an overly enjoyable person to be around. Aurora Police Detective Mike Dunbar described him like this.
Paul was the type of personality that doesn't endear him to you. Some people might be guilty, but you want to believe they are innocent. You look for the good, the positive, because of personality. Paul didn't have the kind of personality that made you want to help the guy out. Given all the circumstantial evidence, there wasn't a lot of motivation to want to try to clear the guy.
Although Haley decided to live with Paul after Sue's death, it wasn't easy when he remarried a flight attendant in just 6 months. In an effort to clear his name, Paul agreed to a polygraph test. He passed, which helped to move the investigation in another direction.
This is where we are ending part 1 on Stella Nickell. See ya for part 2.
We would love for you to become part of the Corrupt crew. You can find us on Patreon with multiple tiers and PayPal. This will score you our appreciation and will announce your name in a future episode. Both links are in the episode notes. Case suggestions and feedback can be emailed to us at corruptpod@gmail.com.
The sources for this episode would be listed in the episode notes. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Don't forget to subscribe to catch our new Corrupt content. Please also leave us a review wherever you're listening to this episode. Bye!
Bye!